Jen Su Aing first met Li Yu in his own living room. As he entered the door with a cigarette in his mouth, he saw Jen Suilin and a boy sitting on the sofa. The two were playing with a basketball. Hearing the door open, the two chatting on the sofa turned their heads in unison. The moment Jen Su Aing and the boy made eye contact, he suddenly found himself unable to move. At that moment, there's a saying called love at first sight, which precisely described his feeling of being attracted at first sight. In short, his heart raced, and the veins on his forehead throbbed. Seeing him, Jen Suilin hurriedly said, "Brother, you're back. This is my classmate, Li Yu, the grandson of the old chief." Jen Su Aing exclaimed he had never met him before. His brother replied that Uncle Li had been transferred to another province before, and had just returned this year. They had known each other since childhood but had not seen each other for a long time. Jen Su Aing suppressed his excitement, trying to keep his face calm as he walked over and stretched out his hand with a smile. "The grandson of old Li, then you should call me brother." Li Yu's expression was quite indifferent, but not impolite. He shook hands lightly, nodded, and called him Brother Jen. Jen Su Aing's fondness for him grew. The firm and supple muscles in his hand made his heart flutter. He deliberately patted Li Yu's back, saying, "You just finished playing soccer, don't turn the air conditioning too low. Your clothes are still wet, you might catch a cold." Jen Suilin, rarely seeing his brother so amiable, quickly picked up the remote control and turned up the temperature. Jen Su Aing then asked Aunt Wu to prepare a meal for the two young men. By chance, Aunt Wu was not around. Seeing his brother in a good mood, his brother decided to show off his cooking skills, heading straight to the kitchen to make a dish of spicy eggplant. As soon as the others left, only Li Yu and Jen Su Aing were left, staring at each other. Li Yu felt somewhat awkward, while Jen Su Aing enthusiastically patted his shoulder and said with a smile, "What are you standing there for? Sit." Li Yu smiled politely and sat down. Jen Su Aing also sat next to him, gazing at his smooth cheeks and distinct features, almost wishing he could pin him down on the sofa right then, strip off his jersey, and have his way with him. Jen Su Aing managed to keep a normal expression on his face and asked in the tone of an elder brother, "The college entrance exam is just around the corner. Are you able to adapt after transferring schools?" Li Yu gave a non-committal answer, "I can adapt," but his gaze couldn't help drifting towards the kitchen. Jen Su Aing lit a cigarette, looked at Li Yu, and offered with a smile, "Want one?" Li Yu refused. Not catching on, Jen Su Aing observed his porcelain-like face, noticing his indifferent and aloof expression. But he wasn't blind. It was clear to him that Li Yu wasn't much interested in engaging with him. No wonder, since he was a friend of Jen Suilin, who knows what that guy might have said about him. It would be strange if his friends were to take a liking to him. But the more it was like this, the more challenging it became. Jen Dashao indeed liked those who played hard to get. He pretended not to see the embarrassment in Li Yu's eyes, continuing to make conversation. "So, your name is Li Yu, huh?" Li Yu answered, "Yu, as in Jade." Jen Su Aing teased, "Isn't that a girl's name?" Li Yu dropped his gaze and didn't respond. "That's a nice name. It would be awkward for any other guy, but it suits you and sounds better the more I think about it." Jen Su Aing's tone was already somewhat flirtatious. It was unclear if Li Yu noticed. "Did I ever see you when I was a kid? How old were you when you left? If you were as handsome as you are now, I definitely wouldn't have forgotten. How are your grades? What school do you plan on applying to?" A barrage of questions made Li Yu visibly impatient, but out of politeness, he couldn't just get up and leave. Jen Su Aing, thick-skinned as ever, became even more enthusiastic the more Li Yu ignored him, continuing to make small talk. "You guys are fine." As he spoke, he took the opportunity to pat Li Yu's back, feeling the vigorous young muscles. "Exercise more." At this moment, Li Yu felt extremely embarrassed and wanted to help in the kitchen, but was pulled back by Jen Su Aing to continue the inquiry. "Does Shaolin have a girlfriend?" Li Yu could only shake his head. "If he does, you have to tell me. It's for his own good." "Brother Jen, he really doesn't have one," Li Yu said firmly. "Then do you have a girlfriend?" This was actually what Jen Su Aing really wanted to ask. What did it matter to him if Li Yu had a girlfriend or not? Feeling really uncomfortable, Li Yu had no choice but to say, "I don't have one either." Jen Su Aing was quite happy inside. Seeing that it was enough, he stopped pestering Li Yu. The impatience in Li Yu's eyes was already undeniable. In fact, Jen Su Aing wasn't someone who would annoy people upon first meeting. Unfortunately, as Jen Suilin's friend, Li Yu naturally didn't favor him. Jen Su Aing knew when to stop. Annoying him further would be counterproductive. "You sit here, I'll go check the kitchen." Saying that, he got up and went to the kitchen. Li Yu finally breathed a sigh of relief. As soon as Jen Su Aing entered the kitchen, He saw his younger brother wearing an apron and cooking with a focused expression. Leaning against the doorframe, Su Aing casually said, "How's it going?" "Almost done, but the smoke is pretty heavy." Su Aing walked over to him and, looking into the pan, remarked, "Smells good." Shaolin had been teased by his brother since childhood. Hardly ever received such gentle treatment, he didn't know how to respond. Su Aing said nonchalantly, "With Lee's grandson parachuting in like this, the girls at your school must be going crazy." "Yeah, on the first day, they ran to our classroom to see him. The hallway was packed with girls." For some reason, Su Aing felt a bit proud. "I'll call him," he said quickly. Soon, 3 dishes and a soup were placed steaming on the table. Li Yu and his younger brother sat down together, finally looking a bit more relaxed. Su Aing took out a bottle of fruit wine with a relatively low alcohol content, just right for the kids to have a sip and liven up the mood. Su Aing didn't react much. Li Yu glanced at the wine glass and said, "Brother Jen, I don't drink." He pushed the wine glass towards Li Yu with a laugh. "What's there not to drink about? How can a man not drink? Don't worry, this has a very low alcohol content. Even my dog can drink it with no problem." Li Yu frowned slightly. "Brother Jen, we still have classes in the afternoon. It's not a big deal, come on, give your brother some face." A flash of displeasure crossed Lin Yu's eyes, but she didn't say anything. She picked up her glass and took a sip. Su Aing laughed and said, "You little girl, men should drink in big gulps. Come on, Xiao Lindsay, show him how it's done." Su Aing grabbed the glass and downed half of it in one gulp, but he drank too quickly and choked. "It's fine," he coughed with a red face. Li Yu quickly patted his back and asked if he wanted water. Su Aing waved his hand, and Su Aing lifted his cup to Li Yu's eyes. "Come on, have a drink with your brother." Li Yu helplessly raised his glass, clinked it with Su Aing's, and then took a rather decent sip. Su Aing watched Li Yu's reluctant little looks and felt a twisted sense of pleasure. Young Master Jen started picking food contentedly and tapped the shrimp plate with his chopsticks. "Xiao Lindsay, peel some shrimp for your brother." Su Aing put down his chopsticks and honestly started peeling the shrimp. Li Yu's hand paused, and he glanced at Xiao Lin's hands. Such beautiful hands, why not do something more worthwhile, Li Yu thought. But as it was someone else's family affair, he couldn't interject and had to hold back. The Jen brothers, however, were used to it. Su Aing peeled the shrimp cleanly and put them into his brother's bowl, then he started eating again. After the meal, it was almost time for them to go to school. "Let's go, I'll take you to school," said Su Aing, glancing at Li Yu with difficulty, signaling, "Brother, we want to take a shower first, we're too dirty from playing basketball." "Then go, I'm not in a hurry." Su Aing has never been this patient with his brother. The suggestion made Su Aing quite uncomfortable. "I'll go take a shower, Li Yu, wait for me upstairs, I'll be quick." Su Aing said to Li Yu, "You use the bathroom in my room, it'll save some time." Li Yu was extremely reluctant, but couldn't find a reason to refuse, so he followed Su Aing upstairs. After he entered his room, the sound of water soon followed. Su Aing stared at that thin door, her mind filling with indecent fantasies. This was a true test of willpower. Li Yu showered quickly and then asked Brother Jen for clothes. Su Aing, holding the prepared clothes, walked over and couldn't help but glance at him as she handed them over. Su Aing completely lost her composure at the sight, but no matter how flustered she felt, she didn't dare make a move. Li Yu, busy with taking the clothes, didn't notice Su Aing's brazen gaze. Looking at Li Yu's sturdy figure, Brother Jen couldn't help but fall into a fantasy. Then, upon reaching the garage, Li Yu's expression changed. Su Aing was secretly delighted. There isn't a man who doesn't love cars. She patted Li Yu, asking which one he liked. He hesitated. "Whichever you find convenient. You pick which one to drive today." Su Aing said this and naturally placed her hand on Li Yu's shoulder. Xiao Lin's body stiffened, and he pursed his lips, quickly averting his gaze. Li Yu casually pointed at the Maserati. "That one. Let's go with it. Young Master Jen has a fine taste." After dropping the two off, she also opened the door and got out of the car. Li Yu's face, however, looked quite unpleasant. After saying goodbye to Su Aing, he quickly disappeared into the crowd. Watching Li Yu's retreating figure, young Master Jen licked her lips. That night, he vented his frustrations on the fair-skinned boy in the hotel. While his body was exhausted, he still felt unsatisfied. He wished it was that indifferent, handsome young man beneath him. However, no matter how beastly Jen Xiao was, he didn't plan to make a move on Li Yu just yet. The college entrance exam was less than 2 months away. The child had been studying diligently for over a decade. Since he couldn't afford to disrupt him now, it was best not to mess with anyone from the old Li family. He was their treasure. If the old Li family found out, he wouldn't be able to stay in town. He stubbed out his cigarette in the ashtray and stopped thinking about it. Maybe in a few days, he'd forget what Li Yu even looked like. Why was he so conflicted? For 3 weeks straight, Su Aing didn't go home and had almost forgotten about Li Yu. It was just then that his father happened to visit and sent him a WeChat message to come home for dinner and to pick up his younger brother on the way. So he had no choice but to leave work early to pick up Su Aing from school. Not far from the school gate was a basketball court. He immediately spotted Su Aing and the nearby Li Yu. His heart skipped a beat. From a distance, Lin saw him and quickly ran over, flashing a toothy grin. "Bro, you're here." Su Aing glanced at him briefly, his gaze soon drifting to Li Yu. Li Yu executed a beautiful 3-step layup, then tossed the ball aside, his eyes eventually setting on their side. He paused, then also ran over. Su Aing's attention was entirely captivated by him. The longing for Li Yu that he had suppressed for this time surged back at the sight of him, spreading like wildfire. As the group prepared to set off, seeing that Li Yu was also going, young Master Jen secretly rejoiced. He asked his brother if Li Yu was going as well. The brother replied, "Yes, and he has invited other classmates as well. But first, Li Yu will come home with us for a meal." Su Aing was about to ask how many classmates he had invited and why, when Li Yu, sensing his intention, replied in a somewhat cold tone, "Today is Su Ailin's birthday." Su Aing's indifference left the conversation without a follow-up. The three of them returned home each preoccupied with their own thoughts. As soon as the brother entered, all eyes were on him. "Try this," Su Aing offered, cutting the first slice of cake. The main topic of conversation at the dinner table was centered around Su Aing, which Su Aing found exceedingly dull. After the meal, Li Yu took out a gift that caught Su Aing's attention. Unexpectedly, it was the same model of cell phone as his own. Su Aing had thought that Li Yu, being such a spirited beauty, would have something creative to give, and couldn't help feeling somewhat disappointed. Having lost all interest in staying here, Su Aing also pulled out a checkbook from his pocket, filled in an amount, tore it off and handed it to his younger brother as a coming-of-age gift. Their father, who happened to be beside them, glanced at the check and disapproved, saying, "Su Aing, you could have chosen a gift for your brother. What's a teenager going to do with so much money? It's not appropriate." Su Aing, unconcerned, replied, "He's of age now, he should know how to spend money." Disinterested in picking out a gift for that woman's son, Yuli snorted. Disappointment flickered in the little brother's eyes as he had wanted to give something to his brother. Lin Yu spoke up, "Today is your coming of age. It wouldn't be good to leave. Tomorrow is your birthday. Stay here, and I'll accompany your brother." Su Aing couldn't have asked for anything better, so they both headed to the parking lot. In a place with no one around, Li Yu quietly said to "Brother Jen, you don't know that today is Su Ailin's birthday, do you?" "I forgot," Su Aing replied nonchalantly. Li Yu looked up. "Today, you didn't even say happy birthday to him." Su Aing couldn't remember if he had said it or not but thought it didn't really matter since he had come in person and given a red envelope. Li Yu coldly stated, "Su Ailin has always admired you." Saying it to him today, in person, would mean more than any gift. Unaccustomed to such sentimental narratives, Su Aing felt he had overestimated Li Yu, laughing it off. "Admiration, eh?" About to add something else, he swallowed his words. "Let it be. Our relationship isn't the same as yours with your brother," Li Yu persisted. "Brother Jen, at least send him a text wishing him a happy birthday." Amused by the suggestion, the young master took out his phone and texted Su Aing, "Happy birthday, little Lindsay, from your brother." Almost instantly, he received a reply, "Thanks, brother. I'm really happy you could come today." With a smile that wasn't quite a smile, Su Aing looked at Li Yu, asking, "Satisfied?" Li Yu nodded, looking extremely happy. 2 weeks later, young Master Jen's busy schedule consumed him entirely. But after the meeting with the student council, Su Aing couldn't forget Li Yu. His mind constantly pictured Li Yu, and he even started to pay rare attention to the students' exam schedule, looking forward to hanging out with Li Yu after the exams. Finally, he couldn't resist anymore. He turned the steering wheel and drove to the school. From the basketball court, he heard some shots and the sound of balls bouncing. He looked around but didn't see any familiar faces. Su Aing laughed at himself, thinking it was like shooting a TV drama. Under the intense work pressure, he hoped for a companion who could truly make him relax and be happy. This companion should ideally look like his dream person, someone he could never get tired of looking at. That's why he did something so foolish, standing on a high school basketball court, hoping for a melodramatic encounter. Unfortunately, he didn't run into anyone. Just as Su Aing was about to leave, he heard an uncertain call behind him, "Gen-ge." The voice pierced his heart. Su Aing felt his breath stop, and an indescribable feeling surged in his chest. He turned around abruptly, seeing the boy he liked standing behind him, drenched in sweat, with a post-exercise flush on his face. Liu smiled a bit shyly, shook his wet clothes, and said it was too hot. Su Aing suddenly realized it was indeed very hot today. He asked why Liu was still at school. At that moment, Liu's classmate ran over and asked, "Bro, want to join us for basketball? We're short one person for a 3-on-3. Su Aing thought this kid had good timing and rolled up his sleeves to join. Liu looked at him with interest and said, "Gen-ge, can you play basketball in those shoes and pants?" Su Aing glanced at his tailored suit pants and shiny leather shoes and said, "It doesn't matter. I used to be on the school team." Su Aing bent down, and the stance was set. Several boys gathered around, and the 3-on-3 game started. Liu was on the opposing team. The outfit that Su Aing is wearing is somewhat cumbersome. Coupled with his mind wandering, it's easy for him to get distracted. In a blink, he finds Liu's face shockingly close in front of him. Gen tries to dodge quickly, but his movements are too slow and he fails. Gen and Liu collide almost head-on, with the big guy running full speed into him. One can imagine it wasn't pleasant. Su Aing is knocked directly to the ground, immediately feeling dizzy. Then, Liu ends up lying on top of him, eliciting a cry of pain. The scene becomes somewhat chaotic for a moment as people help Su Aing to the spectator seats. Liu, a bit anxious, asks Gen how he is doing, self-mockingly commenting that he's really not up for this at his age, getting injured with just a bit of activity. Liu crouches in front of him, taking off his shoes and socks, and looks worriedly at his swollen ankle. Su Aing, feeling somewhat nervous for some reason, tries to pull his foot back, saying it's nothing. However, Liu holds onto his foot without letting go, glances at him, and says, "It's the right foot. How will you drive?" After saying that, he stands up and offers, "Let me take you back." Su Aing thinks to himself that this is a blessing in disguise. The sprain was worth it. Liu drives into the underground parking of his apartment. After opening the door and getting out, he helps Gen from the passenger side. At this point, Gen is somewhat inclined to take advantage of the situation, pretends to be unable to exert force, and leans on Liu. One can imagine the weight. As soon as Liu gets him out of the car, he starts sweating. Gen's supposedly weak foot accidentally trips himself, nearly falling, and ends up unabashedly hugging Liu's waist. Liu says, "Gen, it's too hot, don't cling to me," but that's not how Gen sees it at all. In his heart, he's thinking, "This waist is really slim, this neck is so tempting, I really want to take a bite." Liu doesn't know the vile thoughts inside the seemingly upright young master Gen's heart, and sends him home out of reason and sentiment. Su Aing lives in this 28-story apartment building. His stomach starts growling in the elevator, and he gazes eagerly at Liu. After Liu enters the apartment, he glances around and sees only instant noodles in the fridge. Su Aing comfortably leans back on the sofa, smiling at him. "I'll eat whatever you make." Watching him with amusement, she said, "I'll eat whatever you do." While boiling water, Su Aing didn't let him be idle. "Liu, help me out. I want to take a bath and change my clothes." Liu helped him into the bathroom as Su Aing started to undress. Liu was momentarily stunned. Su Aing was quite confident in his physique. The only question was whether Liu had any interest in men. So, as he slowly unbuttoned, he observed Liu's face for any reaction. Unexpectedly, when his shirt came off, there was no expression on Liu's face. Feeling a bit disheartened, Su Aing called out, "Help me, I need to take my pants off." Liu supported his arm, and in a few moves, Su Aing's pants dropped to his feet. Liu's expression changed slightly. He wondered if it was a trait inherited from the Gen family. Su Aing had it too, but despite his attractive exterior, his character was truly lacking. Liu couldn't hold back any longer and whispered, "Brother Gen, the water is boiling. I'll go check on it." Su Aing glanced at him and noticed his eyes darting away, thinking he saw a hint of something. He was even less inclined to let him leave now. Sweat appeared on Liu's forehead again. He always felt that Su Aing was deliberately teasing him, yet he also thought he might be overthinking it. At that moment, Su Aing deliberately leaned in close, his bare body pressing against Liu, his lips lightly grazing Liu's cheek. Watching Liu's ears turn red, he thought this kid was just too adorable and enticing, possessing both the innocent shyness of a youth and the steady calm of a man. not to mention his handsome looks. Where else could you find such a rare gem? The bathtub was ready, and at that moment, Su Aing made up his mind, enjoy the pleasures of the moment, the bath is ready. No matter whose grandson he was, the bath was ready, and he couldn't let it go. With seemingly newfound strength, Li Yu half lifted, half carried Su Aing into the tub, and almost fleeing from the bathroom, Su Aing laughed at the sight of his retreating back, mouth askew. Indeed still a child, he thought. The time when he could pin this youngster down and shower him with affection didn't feel far off. Su Aing took a comfortable bath and waited for Li Yu to come, but he didn't show, probably frightened by him. He slowly dried himself off before calling out for Li Yu to bring his bathrobe. Li Yu's eyes were still dodgy, not daring to look at him directly as he handed over the bathrobe. Su Aing teased him on purpose, "Why are you acting like a shy little girl? Whatever I have, you have too. What are you shy about?" Li Yu frowned, wanting to retort, but then he realized that whatever he said, he'd still be the one embarrassed. Amused, Su Aing laughed heartily. "How's this physique? The muscles look good, right? I have to work out at least twice a week. They don't just come naturally." While putting on his bathrobe, he whispered in Li Yu's ear, "Do you know which part of a man is most important to train?" Li Yu said he didn't know. With a suggestive smile, Su Aing said, "The waist is the most important. You'll understand eventually. Tell me the truth, have you ever slept with anyone?" Su Aing was inwardly laughing at the kid. He didn't know before how amusing it could be to tease a youngster. Li Yu took a deep breath. "Brother Jen, if it weren't for getting hurt because of me." "But you said to relax." "If it weren't for you being Su Aing's brother, I would have left long ago." Now he truly doubted what this frivolous and boring person could possibly have in common with Su Aing. Finally dressed, Su Aing was helped by Li Yu to the table. "Brother Jen, you eat." "I should go," Li Yu said stiffly. "My mom is waiting for me to have dinner at home." Su Aing was somewhat disappointed. He regretted getting carried away in his teasing. How nice it would have been if Li Yu could have stayed to keep him company. Su Aing twisted her ankle and didn't feel like going to work. Upon hearing from Li Yu that his sister had injured her foot, the brother decided to visit. He didn't refuse and also invited Li Yu to come along. Their father suggested that the brother bring everything needed as it was close to the examination site, so, Li Yu and Su Aing went to the brother's place. "Has it been cured?" The bell rang, instantly lifting Su Aing's spirits. "No need." The brother insisted on seeing her foot. "No need." Initially, Su Aing was reluctant, but then she thought showing her swollen ankle might make Li Yu feel guilty. Thus, she boldly placed her foot on the sofa. Su Aing rolled up his trouser leg, took out a bottle of oil from his bag, grabbed her ankle, and started massaging it from light to heavy pressure. Li Yu, sitting beside, felt uncomfortable no matter how he sat. He didn't understand why Su Aing was so nice to such a brother. Just 2 hours ago, he was still bringing crayfish for his brother. As Su Aing's hand applied more pressure, Su Aing couldn't help but grit her teeth in pain. The brother was almost coaxing her, "Can you bear with it a little longer, please?" Su Aing, unable to bear the pain, kicked out. The brother fell to the ground. Li Yu couldn't stand it anymore, stood up angrily, and said to Su Aing that he was only trying to help. What was she doing? At his words, both were stunned. The Jen siblings were used to this kind of interaction, one willing to endure, the two accustomed to it. Su Aing felt somewhat embarrassed and softly called out for Li Yu. Realizing his overreaction, Li Yu sat down with a frown. Su Aing furrowed her brow, not knowing why he was angry. Thinking it over, Li Yu was actually quite loyal. Su Aing naturally took out the crayfish, planning to peel it for her brother and also invited Li Yu to sit down. Su Aing had always loved eating spicy crayfish, and so did her mother. Her father, Yuan, was different. He found such things unclean. Often, it was over such trivial matters that her parents would start arguing. Later, Yuan had an affair, and afterward, her mother passed away. Yuan then brought Su Aing's mother into their home, which made Su Aing, as a child, hate that woman and her father immensely. How rebellious was she back then? She would do anything that was disgraceful or made her father upset. It's a miracle that she didn't kill Su Aing and that Yuan didn't beat her to death. So now, Su Aing skillfully wraps the shrimp while the young master eats them one after another. Shao keeps eating one after another. Then, his brother commands to wrap one for Li Yu as well. Li Yu, with a stern face, insists on doing it himself, saying, "Let me do it. Don't bother, it's hot." Li Yu speaks expressionlessly, "I prefer to do things myself." He suddenly tears off the shrimp head. The cat, feeling a simmering anger inside, is particularly annoyed by Su Aing's directions to Su Aing. Su Aing seems not to catch the sarcasm in his words, saying, "You two eat less. It's too spicy, I'm worried about your stomachs. Make sure you're in good condition tomorrow. Don't get an upset stomach." Su Aing nods and laughs, "Bro, don't worry, I'm not nervous." Su Aing also cracks a smile, "Not nervous." Liu shakes his head, feeling indifferent, "Not bad, somewhat gutsy. So, do well in the exam tomorrow. If you can pass the workers' exam." Su Aing looks at him with some expectation, "If you pass, tell me what you want, and I'll agree to it." "Thanks, brother," the younger brother happily responds. Su Aing then turns to Liu, "Where do you guys want to go after the exams?" Liu doesn't reply. He looks forward to the summer vacation that's about to start. Spending it with Su Aing would be wonderful, but he really doesn't want to see Su Aing. The three of them eat and drink, and time flies. That night, Su Aing and Liu sleep over at Su Aing's place. The next day, they take a taxi to the exam venue. For the first time, Su Aing does what a brother should do, picking up his brother from the college entrance exam. Of course, the main purpose wasn't just for him. As soon as they reach the street of their school, he starts feeling overwhelmed and decides to walk to the school gate, looking around aimlessly. Just as he heard someone behind him calling him Mr. Jen, he turned his head and saw, coincidentally, it was none other than Liu's elder brother, Li Xuan. What a coincidence! He wasn't particularly close to Li Xuan, but under the scorching sun, amidst the crowds, it was quite an event. The two, sharing the same purpose, met unexpectedly. To some extent, this encounter brought them closer. They even talked about the Beihai project. Soon, Su Aing saw at the school gate a fair, handsome young man with rosy lips and white teeth. He was even more excited than Li Xuan, shouting, "Liu! Liu!" From a distance, Li Xuan was startled by him, giving him a strange look. Liu paused, then turned to see Su Aing waving at him. Next to him stood his elder brother. Liu smiled at his brother and hurried over, saying that he did not do too badly on the test. The two-day national college entrance examination ended quickly. On the afternoon it ended, when Su Aing went to pick someone up, he found out that Liu had been picked up by a car arranged by the Li family. Although he felt somewhat disappointed, Su Aing took his brother to the hotel. With only the four of them at the meal, he talked quite a bit of sweet talk. Aside from when Dong Yuan spoke, occasionally including Su Aing, there was hardly anything to do with him. He just listlessly swirled his wine glass until his father suggested his brother in turn at his elder brother's company. Su Aing was not pleased, saying the company did not need to feed any dead weight. If they really wanted to train him, let him wash dishes. Zhao Yan immediately sat up straight, looking almost pleadingly at Dong Yuan for help. Just when they were at a stalemate, Su Aing sincerely pleaded, "Brother, let me intern at your company. I'll start with cleaning if I have to." Su Aing impatiently replied, "Who needs you to clean? Our company's cleaning staff earns 2,200 a month, which is pretty good. They support a child and a sick husband quite well. Are you going to take their job?" The supervisor's face immediately changed. It was obvious that these words were meant to provoke. Su Aing didn't bother arguing with his father. He stood up and said, "If you want to come, then come. I won't disturb your family dinner." After saying that, he turned and left. Su Aing's eyes followed his departing figure, a hint of joy gradually appearing in his eyes. Feeling irritated, Su Aing drove home. Whenever he thought of the three of them sitting together, his chest felt tight and uncomfortable. His expectations for Su Aing were simple: the less he saw of him, the better. But his father just wouldn't let things go the way he wanted, always pushing Su Aing towards him, trying to rekindle their brotherly bond. Su Aing parked his car by the roadside. Feeling uneasy, he wanted to find someone to relax with. He took out his phone and looked at the familiar names, but at that moment, he couldn't quite recall their faces. When he scrolled to Liu, his hand paused. He invited Liu to hang out without his brother, but Liu coldly refused. Su Aing was reluctant to hang up, adding hopefully, "If I bother you before you sleep, will you dream of me?" Liu didn't respond, and Su Aing hung up disappointed. After resting at home for several days, quite a bit of work had piled up at the company. As soon as Su Aing returned to work, he was busy for several consecutive days. However, he didn't forget about inviting Li Xuan to dinner. Despite scheduling with him for 2 days, Li Xuan was always too busy. Not wanting to seem too eager, Su Aing stopped calling. He originally thought he would definitely not be able to see Li Xuan before he left, but unexpectedly, he received a call from Liu. When he saw the caller ID, it reminded me to believe in myself. Su Aing felt his heart skip a beat twice. This was the first time Li Yu had called him. Li Yu's older brother is about to return to Guangxi soon and wanted to have a casual meal together. Su Aing was naturally happy to hear Li Yu's invitation and arrived at the restaurant half an hour early, only to be told that Li Xuan couldn't make it. The meal was to be hosted by Li Yu instead. Su Aing's eyes lit up, and he quickly agreed. Seeing that there was still time, Su Aing went to the restroom to comb his hair for a long time. Li Yu arrived on time. Hearing the knock on the door, Su Aing adjusted his sitting posture, pretended to look at his phone, and hurriedly welcomed Li Yu when he came in. Faced with such a sunny young man, Su Aing naturally chose to forgive. He directly ordered a big table of dishes to greet and then anxiously asked why his brother didn't come. Su Aing was slightly startled, wondering why he should come. He also felt that Li Yu was somewhat distracted, so he asked Li Yu what his plans were after the exam. Li Yu, having heard that Su Aing was going to intern at his brother's company, also wanted to go and asked if it was possible. Su Aing was stunned, joy filling his heart for a moment. He couldn't ask for more than having Li Yu come. But after all, as a veteran in the business field, Jen understood a simple truth: the harder a fruit is to reach, the sweeter it is. He quickly pretended to be somewhat troubled and said, "Considering the relationship between you two brothers and me, this is really nothing, but you see, you're only 17 or 18 years old. Our company is particularly busy, and I'm very strict with my employees. Even employees who have been in the industry for several years sometimes can't stand it. It's not that I doubt your ability. I'm mainly worried that you'll suffer. Brother Jen, you're doing big business. I discussed it with my parents last night, and they also think I can learn a lot from you. I'm not afraid of hardship or suffering, just afraid you won't accept me." Su Aing thought to himself, "I've liked you for 800 years already," but didn't dare to say it. Li Yu quickly thanked him, making Su Aing very happy. He remembered he had a business trip coming up and thought it would be a great opportunity to bring Li Yu along. At that time, Su Aing really didn't think much of it, assuming Li Yu just wanted to hang out with his brother. After the two had dinner, Su Aing wanted to take Li Yu out for fun. A buddy had just opened a new bar, so they decided to go there today. Li Yu had no reason to refuse. Upon entering the bar, Su Aing looked up and realized it was a gay bar. Seeing the place filled with men sticking close to other men, Li Yu realized everything immediately. Su Aing was also quite embarrassed. It wasn't intentional to bring Li Yu here. Su Aing leaned in and whispered, "I really didn't know it was like this here. Did it scare you? Let's not go in." Li Yu, with a smile that was not quite a smile, said, "We're already here, let's go in." Su Aing looked at him surprisingly. Even Li Yu found it somewhat interesting. After a few drinks, Su Aing grew bolder and leaned in to whisper, "What are you looking at? What do you find interesting?" Li Yu didn't say a word. Su Aing said to Li Yu, "In the future, whether you want to do business or become an official, you can't avoid these occasions. You're not getting any younger. I'll take you out more often." Li Yu glanced at him and asked, "Brother Jen, do you often bring Su Aing here too?" "Why would I bring him? It's no fun," Su Aing replied. A hint of imperceptible sarcasm flashed in Li Yu's eyes. At that moment, Li Yu stood up, intending to go to the restroom. Su Aing, a bit tipsy, grabbed his hand as he rose. Li Yu's extremely lucid and slightly indifferent gaze sobered Su Aing up quite a bit, leaving him only able to chuckle. "I'll go too," just a bit hard to stand up. Supporting his arm, lifting him up, when Su Aing stood, he seemed to hear the words, "That's all the alcohol tolerance you have." He, Shao, surely had more tolerance than that. He might as well pretend to have just that much. "If you don't drink with me, I get drunk easily on my own. Carry me to the restroom," Su Aing said. Li Yu laughed mockingly, "It's my fault now? Just drink less if you can handle it," Su Aing replied. "Wait until I have the chance to show you what a real capacity for liquor is." Li Yu didn't stoop to his level and let go of his hand. "As long as you can stand, you should go by yourself." With that, he turned and headed toward the restroom. Su Aing followed behind. When he came out of the restroom, he caught sight of Li Yu's back and thought to himself, "This kid is actually waiting for me. I'm too flattered." But he quickly realized something was wrong. Li Yu was blocked by a few people. A chubby man in his 30s, holding a bottle of alcohol, his face flushed from drinking, was looking at Li Yu with a silly grin, looking extremely sleazy. Su Aing immediately understood what was happening. He saw the chubby man place his hand on Li Yu's shoulder and lean in as if to speak to him. Li Yu swatted his hand away with a wave. With a murderous look on his face, Su Aing rushed over, thinking this fat jerk dared to touch his person. The chubby man's friends immediately pounced to rescue him. Su Aing sprang forward and kicked a bespectacled man far away. The commotion quickly caught the attention of the security guards. Several tall and burly guards swiftly approached, smiling and asking, "Su Aing, how do you want to handle this?" Liu didn't say much, only that he wanted to go home. After such a scene, Su Aing lost the mood to have fun. He carefully observed Liu's expression in the car. He felt their first date was a complete failure. From extremely noisy to extremely quiet, in the end, Su Aing couldn't hold back his awkwardness and said, "That place is pretty pricey." "They saw you were young and thought you were?" Liu turned to face him, his gaze landing on his face. "Thought I was what?" His boldness was startling. Su Aing felt a bit guilty under his gaze. Of course, he didn't dare say it directly and just laughed, "Mainly because you're too handsome. Even if you went to an ordinary bar, wouldn't girls still hit on you?" Liu's calm and serene gaze stayed on him for 2 or 3 seconds before slowly moving away. He asked, "Brother Jen, when does Suilin start work?" "Probably in a week or 2. My dad allowed him some time off." But then Liu said something unbelievable, "I want to start early." With Li Xuan visiting the company, we apologized to him again. We've given Su Aing enough face. Then we discussed the land matter with Li Xuan. Su Aing provided Li Xuan with some project-related materials. In the end, Li Xuan promised that after returning to Guangxi, he would help look for suitable land. With his word, Su Aing felt much more at ease. Before leaving, he didn't forget to worry about his younger brother.